I need Matt Stafford to stay healthy. It's what I need. It's what I need for Christmas. It's what I need for Thanksgiving. It's what I need for the rest of the season.
One quarter of the way through the season, now it's still a relatively small sample of data, but it's enough to start having some conversations about who is playing the best. We're talking players, we're talking teams, we're talking units. We're going to spend some time talking today about the names that our data at SumerSports is pointing to. Welcome to the SumerSports Show. Lindsay Rhodes with Sam Bruchhaus. Hi, Sam.
Hey, I love this, Lindsay. I mean, we're in a spot now where we're getting towards having enough data to discuss things like this. And while some positions take longer to stabilize, we have some really interesting names that are starting to play really well.
Totally. Worth pointing out, too, we're going to tell you the way it is according to our SumerSports data. We're not going to fudge it to say this hasn't stabilized. This is because one player had a massive game. We're going to tell you what it is, and then we're going to discuss the context surrounding those people. And you are going to be surprised by some of the names that are at the top of the lists. And I think once we get further into the conversation about some of the teams that pop up as the best teams, and you can read more about all of this at SumerSports.com. Sam posted an article about all of the information we're about to discuss. Before we get to the names of the specific examples here, tell me about the process. Tell me what we're actually looking at here.
So our AI team has put together a process that evaluates every 10th of a second of a player's performance. It makes a reading of that. And what we're going to look at today is per game averages. And so that means a player has been relatively consistent per game. Some of these players may have very high snap totals. We'll flag that if they had one really great play or several excellent plays. And then moreover, we add in how much they played. So there's a couple of instances, as I mentioned, where a player just may have not stabilized to another degree. And that happens with the quarterback position, for example, where we've seen Dak Prescott throw a ton of passes, but we haven't necessarily seen other people who haven't had to be in 40-40 ties, Lindsay, not have to throw that level of passes. And so we'll discuss all that there, but just understand that, number one, we are making readings based off history, based off of basically 10 years of history on a second-by-second basis. Then we are wrapping that up into a per-game view, and then we're also considering how many snaps a player has played.
It's a lot to consider. So let's get to it. Let's start running through some of the offensive names, starting with the quarterback. We're going to read this as if it's like an all-pro type team, but that's not what we're doing. We're not predicting the all-pro team. It's just, this is our first team player. This is our second team player. Just the construct of the roster will be similar in construction, but understand we're not predicting who's going to be the all-pro or tell you who has been the best. We're saying specifically according to our SumerSports data, then this is the guy at the top. And at the quarterback position, who is that?
Dak Prescott, Rain Dakota Prescott for the Dallas Cowboys. He has been far and away the most impactful quarterback according to our Sumer scores. And frankly, that's the reason why everyone loves watching the Cowboys and why that Sunday night game was a close 40-40 tie, because he has been making difficult throws. He has been completing them, and it has been leading to scores. And that is the reason why, on a second-by-second basis, he has been so good this year and kept the Cowboys competitive through 4 weeks.
He is number one on this list. Obviously, you have to take into consideration somebody's passing abilities and somebody's running abilities and how those measure out into impacting the game at large. How do we take that into consideration?
So with Dak in particular, he had a design run touchdown. Quarterbacks at this point in the season have not necessarily stabilized in terms of their run game, just because they have to take a ton of attempts to kind of get a sense of how well they will do. Dak in particular has not run a ton. He did have one really good play, but Dak has had to pass a ton because he is in these extremely competitive games. And what that means is his ability to perform at an extremely high level, which we've seen with Pro Bowl level performances and all pro level performances in week 2 and 4 respectively, means that he likely will probably continue doing this. And we've seen it over a big enough sample size where we're starting to feel good about it. And so will there be some regression? Perhaps. But right now he is far and away the best quarterback in the league, especially when it comes to passing the ball downfield in tough, competitive situations.
I want to be careful about that and ask you if that's what you actually mean, because I think if we zoom out, most people would say, and there are stats that would support, Josh Allen has been the best quarterback in the league. So when you say that Dak Prescott has been the best quarterback in the league, what are you saying?
So what I'm saying is that the actions that he has made, particularly when you take away things like turnover luck, have resulted. He has done the right thing. He has done his job more than any quarterback in the league. The reason why his expected points added in particular, which is typically something that you highlight for the MVP and is different than what we are highlighting in SumerScore, where we are grading the player every 10th of a second in context of everyone else on the field. The difference there is that Dak Prescott had a quality target of George Pickens that George Pickens did not catch. It pops up. It ends up being a back-breaking interception. It also means that on fourth down, game on the line, a pressure is let up against the Bears. Fourth down, he just tries to make a play. He tries to get the ball in the area of wide receiver. It ends up in another pick. That is back-breaking in terms of EPA, but it's not necessarily in terms of SumerScore, which is evaluating the things that player is asked to do and how he performed those.
Number 2, second team is Josh Allen. I don't think we need to go into that one in any more detail. There was another interesting name near the top of our list, though, that I do want to just put on everyone's radar, and that's Sam Darnold.
That's right. Sam Darnold on a per-snap basis has been immensely consistent. He has been able to keep the chains moving, and it has made Clint Kubiak's offense and a couple of these players that we're going to get to here shortly look very, very good. And especially in the face of the Minnesota Vikings really struggling at the quarterback position, this is really interesting. Last year, he was about 10th in our per-snap SumerScore, but he was about 20th in expected points added by the end of the season. That difference was very interesting. We're seeing everything come together for the Seattle Seahawks offense. The only thing is he has not been truly, tested outside of that 49ers game. They haven't asked him to do a ton. Clint Kubiak likes to keep his rush rate pretty high. And as a result, he just hasn't been tested to the level that Dak Prescott has been tested in all 4 games. And in particular, Josh Allen has been tested in the first game, and other players like Patrick Mahomes who have played in these really, really competitive games just hasn't been tested to that rate. And so as the season goes on, I'm really interested to see if he can keep that per snap performance relatively consistent, especially given we haven't seen the high, super high level games that we've seen from some other star quarterbacks in the league this year.
At the running back position, we've got Kyren Williams on our first team and James Cook on our second team. Tell me more.
So very similarly, Kyren Williams has been far and away the best running back this year on a per snap basis. And so we said when he received this extension that he is a success rate running back. He does his job and does it well. That has been the case this year. It has led to the Rams looking very, very good on offense. Then we move to James Cook, another guy who was extended. He's been a little different, though he has had a similar per game performance. He has 8 off explosives. Teams are starting to pack the box against them. That being said, Joe Brady likes to use extra linemen. People like to defend against Josh Allen running the ball as well. But behind that line, he has been able to make the most of it. And it's really interesting, Lindsay. We talked deeply about these 2 players and whether the extensions were worth it. Up until now, SumerScore says that when it comes to running the ball, those 2 players have been very good.
It's interesting to look at our data tables, which you can find at SumerSports.com, and then just click on the data label at the top. James Cook is number 1 amongst running backs in total EPA with 8. Like the difference in EPA for that position versus some of the other positions. For instance, wide receiver total EPA leader there is Puka Nacua with 45. So just to highlight that again, that's the conversation when we're having the conversation about running backs not mattering or, being devalued. It's because of what the best person at this position is actually adding in terms of expected points. But anyway, okay, so those 2 guys obviously having good seasons. Puka Nacua, as already mentioned, is clearly on this list, having an all-world season. This guy, we said before the season that he was it, and he has made us look very good, Sam.
Right. Considering that in fantasy drafts, his ADP was between 8 and 12.
And people were freaked out because of Stafford's injury. I got to bump him down. It's wild.
the holy trinity for me of wide receiver stats, which are in themselves are the cleanest, nicest stats at volume of any statistic in football, period, which is an extremely small sample game and blah, 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 blah. It's tough to take stats at their face value. You can take at face value that Puka Nacua is good. The dude has dominated in target share for the past 3 years, regardless of who the quarterback is. The guy has dominated in yards per route run. Currently, he's like 2 yards ahead of the 5th ranked player. And he has dominated in SumerScore, which is, again, looking at exactly what he's doing. He's running fantastic routes. He's doing extremely well after the catch. Like, the guy is an absolute monster. And he's basically performing thus far in the first 3 years of his career as an all-pro every single game. Like, if you're just a quality starter for every game in this league, you're probably going to be a top 5, top 10 paid player. Puka Nacua is like an all-pro every game and has been so this year. He was last year when he was healthy. The only thing that can hold him back at this point is health. I don't even think Stafford going down would hold him back at this point.
I mean, it's tough to predict that would be the case, right? Though obviously the two of them working in tandem is best case scenario for both of them. Just to go back to that point, I don't want that point to be glazed over here. The yards per route run, his number in our data table is 4.23. That's insane. If you just zoom out and think about what that's actually saying, that means every time he runs a route, he's on average providing you 4 yards. That's wild. And number 2 on that list is 244. Like, literally number 2 drops by almost 2 full yards, and that's Zay Flowers.
Basically, it means that if Puka Nacua is on the field and he plays for the Philadelphia Eagles and he runs a route on first down and a route on second down and they push, they could do that every play and score. Like, that is how at the level that he is operating at right now. It's virtually absurd. Like, through 3 downs, you're going to get a first down if Puka Nacua is on the field.
Speaking of the Eagles, I'm scrolling down the list to find their wide receivers, and their top wide receiver is Devontae Smith with 135. So,
not ideal.
More about the Eagles to come as one of the 2 remaining teams that have yet to lose a game. Want to talk about the other wide receivers first, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Ricky Pearsall.
Amon-Ra St. Brown has kept it up. He's the leader of that Lions team. But Ricky Pearsall is a really interesting one because we think of the year-by-year progression of this 49ers team. And we started out with it being Kittle and Debo. And then, Kittle would have some injuries. All of a sudden, Ayuk was the guy. And now we have kind of settled in through 4 weeks in Ricky Pearsall being the guy. There's a couple interesting part and parcels about this. Like, in terms of SumerScore, he has done excellent. But there have been a lot of big plays. You look at yards per route run, he's still pretty good as well when you're just checking these holy trinity things all together. I'd make the argument, Lindsay, that he's not being used enough. I think his target share should go up as the weeks continue, and thus the kind of variance.
Oh, it's so low.
Right.
His target share is 19.
Exactly. So take our SumerScore metric of being really high as kind of the canary in the coal mine, that this player on a per game basis has been very good, on a per snap basis has been very good, and he probably should be fed a little bit more by Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers offense.
Yeah, targets per route run is down the list. Yeah, those are really good points. This is why these types of data exercises are fun for nerds like us, because you can find information that the team is no doubt looking for and might pivot to. Based on their findings as well. I want to go through the second team wide receivers because I think there's some very interesting names on this list. Jackson Smith and Jigba, I don't think anyone would have blinked had his name been on the first team. He's having an incredible season, taking on the target share, speaking of target share, off the charts there in Seattle, but has just been doing a really bang-up job for them. By the way, I want to note the type of wide receiver that we're seeing a lot on this list. Look at this, like in terms of Puka and Amon-Ra and Jackson Smith and Jigba, like these guys that do the inside out thing and aren't just your traditional, usually, historically your wide receiver 1 is a guy who primarily lines up on the outside. And we're seeing guys that are a little bit more versatile in terms of where they start the play, having a ton of success.
Right. There's basically only one quote X receiver here, and that's George Pickens. And George Pickens is the one with the most question marks who is on here. In terms of SumerScore, the reason why he is doing well is because he makes really big plays for Dak Prescott.
Certainly did in week 4.
Oh, 100%. He makes the big, difficult catches that no one else would make. And again, like, we are scoring these players based off what they are doing in history. So he makes catches that are very difficult to make historically. He makes catches in big positions. And when it comes down to it, Dak has been targeting him when he needs a big play. And he has been converting those at an extremely high rate. You look at his yards per route run, you look at his target share, they're way down the list. He is deeply down there. So there is a question of, can he keep this up? But when CeeDee Lamb comes back, he's not going to be asked to do the heavy lifting of this team. I think he has settled in a contract year into that T. Higgins role that they envisioned for him, that the Cowboys envisioned when they traded for him. And I think that's something that can launch you up into that top tier of payment and of the top tier of SumerScores as well, when you are operating at that level.
Let me ask you this, because the thing about him has always been that he has this extreme athletic talent and can make these wow plays, but he's a little bit inconsistent in terms of like the route running and some of those things that you actually really kind of desperately need out of your wide receiver one. Consistency is so important at that position. Has he improved in that area?
I think that is yet to be said. On a per game basis, which is what we're looking at here, that is the reason why he is on the second team and not on the first team, because the plays that he makes are so big and so impactful that when you just look on a per snap basis, he's actually quite high. And so I think you have to iron the consistency out. You can't have the big boom games if he wants to be a true wide receiver one. Now, if he wants to be a 1B or 2, that is excellent for the Cowboys offense. CD has been doing very well. Obviously struggled with injury over kind of the last game and a half. And when he comes back, if he's the certified wide receiver one and you can harness that boomer bust energy on a kind of game by game basis, it's very valuable for the Cowboys. I don't know if we've seen just quite the game by game consistency from him yet, though.
And then Emeka Egbuka,
who is just, slotted into Baker Mayfield's guy.
I wish that I'd just stuck with my gut around draft time. I loved Emeka Egbuka. He was one of my favorite wide receivers in the draft. And then he went to Tampa Bay. And from a fantasy projection standpoint, I was like, nah, not this year. And I still have him on a couple of teams, thank God. But I was thinking that he would just kind of get clogged up with all the other wide receivers there, and that it might take a little bit longer for us to see what we have seen so far. Now, obviously, injuries happened that have really expedited, I think, his progress in terms of the sheer production that we're seeing out of him, but he has been just a revelation.
Right. And talk about I meets the AI. When you go into these scores and look at the history and what is informing them, Baker Mayfield went on the stand and was asked, hey, which of these plays were you more impressed by? So you can imagine when people are saying that just by watching the game live, what the AI, which is comparing all of these past catches and past routes, what they think about Egbuka. And what basically has shown is that he is a go-to receiver in this league. And he can certainly be an excellent guy who can kind of maintain a level of target share in this league. The question really is he's been in a perfect situation for stats that kind of rack up like SumerScore does and other things on a per game basis, because they played 4 really tough games that they had to utilize him a ton in. And so I'm going to be interested to see if he can be more of the Justin Jefferson type, who just narrowly missed this list, of a guy who can help you get ahead of a team when people have to bear down and, first or second or third drive, or really the whole game plan is about you. I'm really interested to see if, as defenses adjust, he can continue to be that guy.
Yeah. And also what the Bucks can be as their season goes on, and they're not flip-flopping Mike Evans or Chris Godwin being in the lineup. I mean, it's possible that continues, that one guy comes back and one guy goes out. But if they get all 3 of these guys on the field, the things that they can do with Bucky Irving, very much like their chances. They're in Tampa Bay this year. Let's go to the offensive line and start with the tackle position, a position that will not be represented by the Chargers anymore.
Very sad.
It's so
We
sad.
talked about it. We talked about it last week, Lindsay.
I know.
And it
I
didn't,
jinxed them. I did it.
it didn't happen I mean, it happened tragically. Like we were under the impression that it would just be like,
Yes.
oh, it doesn't come together and blah, blah, blah. I didn't expect it to be like literally the wheels come off. They have no more offensive linemen. Herbert is getting smoked, and then it all kind of comes apart. So we'll see how that develops. But
Oh, and it was so obvious too. Like, even if you didn't watch the game and you just looked at numbers, this was a perfect example of the numbers telling you the story, because his time to throw went way down. Like, you could see he didn't have time to get the ball out. The time to throw drops. The average depth of target dropped. And I think at the very end, he took some shots downfield that maybe like averaged it out a little bit more. But there was a chunk of the game where you're like, it's all right there at the line of scrimmage. And so we see the ways that not having your two of the best tackles in the league can affect your football team. Probably didn't even need to, see those ways. That kind of goes without saying. But Laramie Tunsil and Colton Miller are having good seasons there.
so with offensive linemen, it's fun because SumerScore is peeling back kind of the onion. It's very difficult to evaluate these players. It's very results driven, and SumerScore gives us a kind of peek into the window of perhaps what we need to see. And especially when you get down to our frame level or play level SumerScores, you can kind of see it happen on a play-by-play basis. Laramie Tunsil has been the SumerScore god for 2 or 3 years now. Like, you look across the entire sample that we have, and Laramie Tunsil is excellent in pass blocking SumerScore and run blocking SumerScore, and he's consistently good at those two things. That's why it was such a shock when the Texans let him go. So you move him into Washington, and you're trying to find the and so. Because I can tell you, Lindsay, that an offensive lineman is good, and you can watch him, and on a lot of the plays, maybe he's not exactly the point of attack. Maybe he's blocking someone who's not all that good. Maybe the person's dropping off, and there's a bunch of things. The and so here is that Jaden Daniels has gone down, and the offense has still performed pretty well with Marcus Mariota, who we have seen struggle with pressure before. Moreover, we've seen Cliff Kingsbury be able to maintain a level of running competence despite basically starting someone who we really love, Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt, but a seventh round rookie running back, which just on average is not that great. They've been able to keep their offense moving with Laramie Tunsil. And so moving on to Colton Miller at the left tackle position, who unfortunately I think got a little banged up in the past game, that offense has kind of struggled a bit, but his SumerScores were still good. And then we see Ashton Genty be able to break it off and really start to dominate at the beginning of last game. And I think when you follow these kind of and so's, which we'll do as we discuss these offensive linemen, these are two guys where it really tracks. They've done a good job protecting, and they've done a good job run blocking. And when you mix both of those things, particularly at the premium position of the left tackle, it means so much to a team. And it honestly is a pretty good projection of how these offenses will continue on.
I want to call out another name here, and that's Penei Sewell, and talk about how he fits into this conversation.
Right. We've mentioned some of these players who in any given role are just so far ahead of the other players. We mentioned Kyron Williams being like that in terms of a success per game and stuff like that. Penei Sewell is one of those players. He's a one-of-one run blocker. And frankly, he's a one-of-one run blocker across our sample. He is several points ahead of any other player in run blocking. And that is because you can deploy him in radically different scenarios than basically anyone else in the league. And in the past 2 weeks, we've basically seen Detroit do that. We saw them really just push around the Baltimore Ravens behind Penei Sewell. We saw the guards do well as well, but they run very strange actions. That's kind of the and so here is you're able to do so much in the run game when Penei Sewell is your right tackle, and he's not too shabby in the pass game either, that it just completely changes the face of an offense because of what you can do with him, and he becomes a true weapon for your team.
So all of those Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery big plays, we tip our cap to Penei Sewell, who deserves a degree of credit for that. What about the guard position? Who stands out here?
So this is an interesting one because we kind of start to see different utilizations. And we'll discuss this a little bit at the linebacker position as well. But you may have your guard who pulls a little bit more, and you may have your guard who blocks a little bit more. This year, we're seeing some guys who have been really good at both. And so you look at Isaac Seumalo at Pittsburgh, and he's been a core part of the reason why this team has been able to kind of keep the chains moving despite having a very low ADOT, a very low time to throw, and a running back room that, got rid of Najee Harris, drafted Caleb Johnson, who basically has not played at all. And they've been able to be variably effective, particularly against a team last week like the Minnesota Vikings, which gives you a lot of different looks. And I think Seumalo has been a major part of that. You look at Chris Lindstrom, and also, like, honorable mention here, Matthew Bergeron and Ryan Neuzel from the Atlanta Falcons. Those guys have been able to keep that moving despite a little bit of adversity against the Carolina Panthers, and they have kind of kept their running game quite sound. And so I think those players have done a very good job of kind of, making a potentially tough scenario with it. In one case, a very old a very old quarterback, and in another case, a very young quarterback, a sound space for success, in particular at the guard position.
On Winu. Also, second team at the right guard position after Chris Lindstrom, who is a name that we talk about every year at this spot.
So Michael Onwenu, and also on the second team here at the tackle position, Morgan Moses, are both from New England. And Lindsay, if I would have told you preseason that we'd have two guys performing really well on the New England offensive line, you probably wouldn't have believed it. The and so here is they right now have the 4th ranked passing offense.
Wild.
It's nuts. And so, like, speaking about the and so for a lot of these guys, building up a great environment for a rookie quarterback or a young quarterback, we are seeing that happen in New England. Mike Vrabel is instituting it with the two veterans, Michael Onwenu, who has been there for a while, Morgan Moses, who they brought in from the Jets, who had a pretty good year with the Jets. They just didn't necessarily want to pay him, wanted to go young at the position. That makes all the difference. And now we're starting to see that kind of payoff through 4 games.
Yeah, and a 2-2 record after 4 in a division where it's starting to look like it's Buffalo at the top, and then 2 teams that you can maybe beat up on a little bit. So New England will be an interesting one to follow for the rest of the season as they continue to try and just add a little bit more and more every single week. From a center standpoint, let's talk about the centers here.
So Tyler Linderbaum has been someone who we have discussed year over year as someone who can really contribute. This year is no different. He has been excellent in our pass blocking SumerScore and in our run blocking SumerScore. And it's kind of the same for our second team member, Eric McCoy. The interesting thing is I think these two players are going to be leaned on extremely heavily for different reasons. I think Tyler Linderbaum is on a team who is expecting to compete and is kind of underachieved, but how many times have we said this about the Ravens early season? I think they're going to lean on him, particularly pulling him at the center position and utilizing his knowledge in the pass blocking to continue and try to get back. I think they have a lot of competitive games coming down the pipe for them. I think they're going to really lean on Linderbaum. McCoy, on the other end, is on a team that has no wins and a young quarterback and a team that they're trying to put together right now. McCoy is another one of these SumerScore all-stars. You put him in the same category as you put Josh Allen or Puka Nacua or Laramie Tunsil. He excels both at pass blocking and at run blocking, and he is calling the shots for that Saints offense. If we continue to see growth from guys like Kendre Miller or Spencer Rattler, I think a lot of it can go on Eric McCoy's head, and I think SumerScore is kind of the beacon of that right now.
Going back to Linderbaum for a second and the Ravens offense, a stat that I found today that just knocked my socks off. Lamar Jackson has the highest sack rate in the NFL, 12.6%.
It's very interesting. And just anecdotally, you watch the film and I wonder how much you can pin that on the offensive line, really, because we did see the Lions have success at running the ball, but we've also seen Lamar hold the ball in a way that he always has been able to, but not be able to have that second gear. Now, they have played Myles Garrett, and they have played Aiden Hutchinson, and they have played Chris Jones, and they have played...
That's insane, by the way.
Greg Root, Greg
the
Russo and Ed
wildest
Oliver.
schedule.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's going to keep coming. I think one of the secrets of this season is that the NFC East, the AFC North, and the NFC North all play each other. And there's a real chance if we all of a sudden start seeing the Giants win, as we saw, that there's like 8 to 12 teams that are all playoff viable there. And so I think in particular, like discussing Linderbaum or discussing Lamar Jackson, that we may see some of these teams be like 10-7 or 11-6, where in past years they would have been 13-4 or 14-3 due to the schedule. The Packers, the Lions, the Ravens, the Steelers, et cetera, and they may just crack teams in the playoffs because their schedule was so difficult. And so I'm keeping a close eye on that, particularly as it pertains to the Ravens.
Yes. The divisions, I mean, the NFC North was one that we all saw coming in terms of being a really tough division, has played out that way. The NFC West is 3 teams that are 3-1, and then Arizona at 2-2 in last place. It's just wild. And then going back to the AFC North, which you just brought up, Pittsburgh sitting on top at 3-1 in like a perfect storm. In a positive way of things going their way, right? Like in terms of, like, we knew that Cleveland probably wasn't going to win a ton of games, even if their defense was all world, which it has turned out to be very, very good. But you've got Baltimore 1-3 following a very tough early season schedule, and now Lamar banged up. And what does that mean about them moving forward? And then you've got Cincy in the 2-hole at 2-2, just getting like outscored by so many points. Their scoring differential is insane. I would not have predicted that division was going to shape up the way that it has so far.
I think that injuries have kind of hit that a lot.
Absolutely.
But
yes. But that's what I mean about the perfect storm for Pittsburgh, because
right.
You look at this team that I still kind of see as a slightly above 500 team. Like,
I totally agree.
I don't think that they are a team that, despite the fact that they're 3-1, is as good as their record suggests that they are. I know people are going to be like, you're a hater for that, but that's what this whole exercise is, right? Is to like dig a little bit deeper than what the record actually shows you. And then, but then I don't know that at the end of the year, I'm going to be proven correct because of some weird twists of fate that I think are going to sort of downgrade their level of competition. Is that fair to say?
The Mike Tomlin voodoo definitely is there. You look at some of the decisions that they made on 4th down. It didn't necessarily make a ton of sense, but they end up winning against the Vikings because they are able to get pressure on Carson Wentz, and they make some timely turnovers as well. You think of the first game, a ball bounces, all of a sudden DK makes a catch. You think of the game against the Vikings, there's an 80-yard breakaway play from DK, and things are spinning their way. But how many years in a row can we see things spin their way, Lindsay? I mean, we've seen it across 5 quarterbacks at this point. We've seen it regardless of really who's playing at all. It's quite magical at this point. I just kind of believe in it as a spirit now.
I'm on the edge. I could be persuaded at this point. Like, I don't know what's going on other than that. Did we forget about tight ends?
We did, Lindsay, and I'm so glad we're coming back to this, because I think a lot of the stuff you've been talking about is going to be proven right.
What stuff that I've been talking about? The rookies being good right away?
The rookies being good right away. And moreover, Tyler Warren has been an absolute beast. He is our first team on our progress report. He has been excellent both in the passing game in terms of SumerScore, by far the best in terms of the passing game, in terms of pass receiving. But the hardest thing for a rookie to do, and we discussed this over and over again with Thomas and with other folks, that it's so hard to adjust to run blocking for tight ends. And he has also been an absolutely dominant player in the run block when it comes to this run offense of the Colts that has been absolutely exemplary. And so what we're seeing from Tyler Warren is a full circle rookie kind of takeover in terms of this tight end position. He's a certified first team candidate right now. He's a certified all-pro candidate as it stands. And it's going to be really interesting to see how defenses evolve with him, because he is doing it on both sides of what he's being asked to do.
And the second team tight end is a guy who I thought back when he was a rookie might have a bigger role than he did. Took a minute to get going, and now he is massive. Trey McBride.
Yeah, it's Trey McBride for a slightly different reason. We're not seeing like great run blocking production from Trey McBride, but that's because he's not asked to do that because he is legitimately the number one target for this Cardinals offense. Kyler Murray goes to him at a rate higher than pretty much any quarterback does for tight ends. He's really the only certified number one target this year, given kind of the decline of Travis Kelce, decline of Mark Andrews to a certain degree. Trey McBride is a true number one target, and he's doing it at an excellent efficiency, both in terms of SumerScore per game in the pass reception and also in terms of yards per route run. So he kind of has the holy trinity of wide receiving going on right now, but he's doing it from the tight end position, and that's why he's second team.
Let's get to the defense here and start with the edge rushers. The two names that are on our first team aren't going to surprise anybody, and that's Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett.
Right. The edge rushing position, much like the wide receiver position, is a place where I really love our SumerScores because they do an excellent job of breaking down exactly what the player is doing to get pressure. And I think that's a really key thing to kind of separate that you won't necessarily get in the pressure numbers or you won't get in the sack numbers. Micah Parsons right now is the best pass rusher that we have on record. Micah Parsons right now is the best pass rusher in the league. Micah Parsons is incredible. He alone, only as a pass rusher, is like playing at a defensive player of the year level. The question is as the season goes on, will they even have to use him as kind of an all-world type guy, which Myles Garrett has had to be? The question is like that line is very deep. They basically outlaid him only as a pass rusher for the most part. He hasn't played a ton of run snaps as compared to some of these other guys. And as a result, he's just been able to tee off on quarterbacks, which is what he does the best. And he is doing it at a rate that is sick. On the flip side, Myles Garrett is a top 10 player in pass rushing. He's like a top 5 player in pass rushing. He's the top 5 player in run defense as well. He is a defense in and of himself. And you're going to hear a lot of other Cleveland Browns names, which is a true credit to them. But you do have to wonder how much of that is because teams are having to devote 2 and 3 guys to Myles Garrett.
100%. Just an incredibly good player. Two guys there. Would you say, without getting into the rest of the list, so you don't have to, we haven't seen all of the names yet, but just off the top of your head, and don't say the name, would those be your top 2 guys in the Defensive Player of the Year voting right now? Or is there someone yet to come that you would put into the conversation?
I think Myles Garrett would be my vote for Defensive Player of the Year this year, followed by Micah Parsons.
Okay, fair enough. And then there's some very good edge rushers that are on the second team. That's Aiden Hutchinson and Will Anderson.
Right. Aiden Hutchinson and Will Anderson are baby versions of what Myles Garrett is right now. They are both making immense impacts in the pass rushing game. Aiden Hutchinson in particular is like in a tier above of everyone else in pass rushing right now. And Will Anderson has been a do-it-all guy as well. And it's great to see these young guys start to come and be the players that who they were drafted to be. It's really exciting to see them really live up to it. There's a lot of good edge rushers. There's a lot of good guys who just missed this list, Lindsay.
There really are. And at the defensive tackle position, there are some big names there as well. Chris Jones, who just lives on this list. Like, just go ahead and, put that name in ink, and then we'll work around it and add some names around it. And this year, the name around it is Malik Collins from the Browns as well.
Right. Malik Collins was let go by the San Francisco 49ers. He joins a Browns team which had drafted Mason Graham as well. And you wonder, you hope that he can kind of just fit in and play well. He has played excellently. Now, again, how much is that entangled with Myles Garrett? It's very difficult to say. But for what he was asked to do, he is doing it at an extremely high level in both pass rushing and in run defense. He's one of the only players that really stood out in both of those roles. Typically with defensive tackles, we see them played, a first and second down guy or third and fourth down guy, especially given the success of the Browns defense. It's excellent to see Malik Collins start to carve out a great role where he is really having an impact on both sides of what he's asked to do.
On the second team here, we've got Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, a couple of Philadelphia guys. By the way, these are the first Philadelphia guys we've mentioned so far, right?
These are the first Philadelphia guys who we have mentioned. It's a
Very
stunning
interesting.
indictment of their offense.
Very much so. Yeah. Okay. So tell me more about these two.
So I wish I could say that both of these players were, single role guys who were playing off of each other. Jalen Carter's the pass rusher and Jordan Davis is the run stuffer. That's not been the case. They've been all world. They have been the center of a Vic Fangio defense that has kept the Eagles afloat. And they have been the center of a special teams unit that have kept the Philadelphia Eagles afloat. We saw it twice in the Rams game where they're lined up on a guard. They clearly have his number. They bowl him over and get a block. And in Jordan Davis's case, which isn't a big part of this as well, he scores a touchdown. But Jordan Davis has put up basically all blue chip level Sumer scores in run defense this year, alongside causing a lot of ruckus in the past, which we have not seen in prior years. And Jalen Carter, spitting notwithstanding, has also put up blue chip grades in every game in terms of pass rushing and not shabby run defense as well. If these two players continue playing like this, which frankly it looks like they're going to continue, it's just a game changer for the Philadelphia Eagles. And much like we discussed their offensive line, which has been pretty banged up throughout the season, even though we've seen a lot of guys play through it, now the defensive line is the thing that just makes them unbeatable.
What about Quinnen Williams? How does he fit into all of this?
So we've seen Quinnen Williams do really good in the run game in particular, but the defense just hasn't been that great. And we also haven't seen him be an immense factor in the pass game. That's why I gave Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis the nod here, because they were a little bit more, fully based. SumerScore gave them the nod when it came to that as well. But their defense is also just better. So I really want to see Quinnen Williams cause more issues in the pass game as well.
All right, I've got another name that I'm curious about, who had a very good year last year in Philadelphia, and really popped in terms of SumerScore. We talked about him a lot in the offseason. Then he went to New England and he got paid, and his name seems to be coming up quite frequently. Where does Milton Williams fit into all of this?
In week 1, Milton Williams made his money, baby. He was a true Pro Bowl level performer. Since then, we've seen him be a little bit more shaky. He's had 2 quality starts in week 2 and week 4 rushing the passer, which is kind of his bread and butter. That is what he was brought to do alongside Christian Barmore. And then we've seen one kind of backup level game. The real thing that I want to hone in on, though, is his run defense. We have not seen that translate from an Eagles uniform to a Patriots uniform. That was the real question, because of the infrastructure that we kind of discussed with that Philly defense. Is if he could perform to that level, he would have to be as a true run stuffer as well. We just have not seen that yet from Milton Williams. However, you can straighten it out and put both together. I think he can have an excellent season.
Yeah. And again, that's worth circling back and just stating again, and we say it every single time, but there is context that's necessary with all of these things, because it's impossible in a lot of ways to pull an individual player's performance out of their environment. They just are in that environment. So all we can do is evaluate what they're doing, that they're asked to do, in the situations that they're in. So there are still question marks that come out of that. We're not necessarily telling you who the best players are. We're telling you who is playing the best. Does that make sense? As a distinction?
Right. And I think the true goal, the true vision of SumerSports when it comes down to it, is to break down the walls between what is predictive and descriptive. But that's also the fun of football, the idea that we can plug and play Milton Williams and it's just going to be great is not exactly a fun thing to watch. Sure, it'd be fun. It'd be like Pac-Man, I guess, where you're just moving around and trying to pick up the stuff and the ghosts are coming at you. But it's a lot more fun when there's 25 different variables and a new head coach and a new defensive coordinator, a new system, and guys are coming in and out of the game. So we're trying to get to a better level of description observation, which our AI team and SumerScores are helping us do, while also being able to maintain a level of predictivity so that we can make better decisions.
And since we're talking about the Eagles and taking him out of the defense and coming off of a couple of second-team defensive tackles that are on the Eagles, let's pivot to linebacker, where we have a couple of Eagles.
Yeah, the Eagles linebackers have been incredible. We have seen Zach Bond be able to continue to play in Vic Fangio's defense to the level that we saw. He has put together all-pro performances to match what he did last year. Bond and the second member of this top team, his teammate and rookie Jahad Campbell, are the only two players to register blue chip coverage and pass rush SumerScores. And by the way, they are actually used in the pass rush. These aren't just like random blitzes. Like, they are used as pass rushers. They're the only two players to register 3 of 4 games with blue chip pass rushing and coverage SumerScores, alongside being pretty good in the run game as well. It is difficult to move the ball in the middle of the field against the Philadelphia Eagles right now. They basically have 4 guys playing at an all-pro level.
Carson Schwessinger, that is very hard for me to say for some reason, from the Cleveland Browns. And then Fred Warner, who again is, in a bold ink marker
right
somewhere on this list always.
Right. It's very interesting to see Carson Schwessinger on here. And I think also, if he would have played enough, and we probably would have seen Quinshaw Junkins on here as well. It was very interesting when the Browns took both of them very highly above expectation, because the Browns are so analytically locked in, but they clearly saw something in the numbers, which, to our case, we thought Schwessinger was a pretty good player at UCLA as well. That was going to make a lot of sense in the context of Myles Garrett and some of these other players. And that is basically what we have seen from Carson Schwessinger. He has specialized in stopping the run, 4 straight premium starts, which basically means, it's not just an above average game. Like, he's solidly a good player in this league when it comes to stopping the run. And he also has had several quality starts in coverage as well. You start to line those up over the course of an 18-game season, and you can be a really, really good player in this league. We're not seeing quite the blue chip stuff that would get him on the first team with Bond and Campbell, but he has maintained a level of consistency, a level of quality consistency that we don't really see from anyone else other than Fred Warner, who has been doing it for years at this point.
You've got my wheels turning there, what you mentioned about the Browns and taking a running back and a linebacker high in the draft. And the relationship between them being an analytically sound team and the Lions and what they did a few years ago. And they're a front office that I would also describe that way. And remember when they took Gibbs? They went running back, linebacker also. We might need to revisit that come draft time.
Well, I think there's structural elements to it. And the first is surplus value. Now, noted, the Browns in particular did not take either of these players in the first round. They took Mason Graham, a premium position that we've seen get paid more and more and more over the last couple of years. But when you have answers or have no good way to get an answer, so in particular, the quarterback position, they figured that they could wait, and they basically hit on, 2 of the top 10 consensus rated, 2 of the top 5 consensus rated quarterbacks in the 3rd and 5th round. They clearly had kind of measured out availability, which is kind of the cousin of the true economics surplus value level stuff. It's like availability. If you think Carson Schwessinger is going to be really, really good and he's not going to be available in the 3rd round, but you think this pool of very premium players, which the edge rushing position was very premium. There was a lot of them. Offensive linemen, very premium, but they were all over the draft this year. Those were the 2 strengths of the draft. Then I think it does make sense to go with the Carson Schwessinger, Quinshaw Junkins. I do kind of push back on the Judkins one in particular, given our discussions of Jacory Krosky-Merritt. We saw Brashard Smith play this week for the Eagles, have a big catch. We've seen a couple of other guys, but he's performing at a really high level, and he's keeping them competitive at games. So who am I to criticize?
Moving on to our top players in SumerScore on the defensive side of the ball. Let's go into the defensive backfield now and take a look at the cornerbacks.
Right. So you start off with Charvarius Ward, who has just been immensely consistent in coverage, and he has been pretty good in run defense as well, which we're not necessarily asking of cornerbacks, but it'll push you up into the first team of SumerScores. I mean, unique scenario, tough family stuff going on. He wants to leave San Francisco as a result. They figure out a deal. He ends up in Indianapolis. So it's great to see him kind of jump back up to the level of Pro Bowl All-Pro play that we saw from him in previous years. The second one is really interesting. Tyson Campbell. You think about the Jacksonville Jaguars, a little overlooked this season. They're sitting here with a pretty good record. Liam Cohen's first year. The kind of unknown reason why that is because their pass defense has been excellent. They're a top 5 rated pass defense according to expected points added per play. And Tyson Campbell has been immensely consistent. He has been highly targeted, but has a negative completion percentage over expected when targeted. And he has basically sat outside on the outside guarding the best players. You know, he's had a couple up and down games in terms of, you know, penalties, but when you look at a play-by-play basis, he has been one of the best players, and he has been a key cog in a defense that is extremely overlooked right now. That's why he gets this highlight, and that's why SumerScore is showing that he likely will be a core contributor to this defense moving forward.
We've got another Jacksonville Jaguar and the slot cornerback conversation here in Jordan Lewis.
Right, and Jordan Lewis has been incredible. He has put up all pro level games at the slot corner position, and he is another core reason that, you know, you mentioned some of these names. These are kind of grab baggy names. Like, you may not know who Tyson Campbell is or Jordan Lewis is, but then when you look at what they're actually doing as a team, as a unit, it makes a lot of sense.
They're an interesting defense in that they have had really good turnover luck so far.
That is correct.
And I know that people will say, well, you create your own luck and all that kind of stuff and like play aggressively and go get the ball and all that kind of, but it's like 5 fumbles, 4 of which have been recovered. That's a very high rate that you would expect to regress as the season goes on. In terms of interceptions, 9 interceptions. It's like, you know, you can't predict that a quarterback is going to throw an interceptable ball that frequently. And so we would imagine that some of these things are going to regress to the means. But what do you think is a fair takeaway from the fact that they have so many turnovers that descriptively does give them credit as a defense?
Right. I mean, you don't want to discount turnovers when we're talking descriptively because they are game changers. A second team member of the cornerback position is Isaiah Rodgers, who had probably one of the best turnover games in the history of the National Football League at the cornerback position. The thing is, you just can't count on them moving forward. And moreover, as you're talking about cornerbacks and slot corners, and to a certain degree, safeties who are asked to be in the run game a little bit more, so they're kind of more like linebackers, but in particular these outside corners, the maximum targets that we've really seen so far this year is like in the 20s. And so there's just not like an excellent stabilization to this yet. And so the players who are able to generate turnovers, or the players who are able to make plays, typically will pop up early in the season. And I think that's a little bit of what we're seeing with these Jaguars players.
That's a really good point. At what point in the season do you think we have enough snaps where that stabilizes? And the absolute, like the names that you would expect to see probably are the ones that pop up here.
Yeah, I'd really like to revisit this probably between week 6 and week 8. I think once you start getting to midseason, you start to see those snap totals double. And like we're getting towards, 100 targets potentially. You're getting like well into the hundreds in terms of routes run against or coverage snaps. That's when we start to understand the guys who are actually just not being targeted because people are scared of them. It takes kind of that much time to get it together.
All right. Last position for the defense before we wrap up the players and we turn to a team conversation, and that is the safety position. No surprise that Derwin James is there. That Chargers defense, just in general, actually, I'm surprised that maybe we haven't seen more Chargers names pop up. They've been playing so well, but Derwin is one that I would expect to see, and then Antoine Winfield at Tampa Bay.
Yeah, Derwin James has had 2 blue chip coverage games and 2 blue chip run defense games. He's a true kind of jack of all trades. You can consider him a linebacker. You can consider him a safety. He lines up basically a defensive end a lot of the time. Like, we've seen the true Derwin James, Jim Harbaugh, like love baby kind of come out this year because he's moving all over the field and he's causing like all kinds of problems, and it's showing up in our Sumer scores. On the other side, Winfield just continues to rack up quality starts. These are two guys who have been doing it for years. They will continue to do it. He has not had a bad game really across passing or run defense at all. Going on to the second team is Eric Murray from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Similar discussion. A lot of quality starts, both from run defense and in the passing game. But will that continue? We will have to see. And then another interesting one, Cameron Curl from the Los Angeles Rams, paired with our second team slot cornerback, Quentin Lake. Lindsay, it seems like Les Snead has done it, and he's turned over this entire defense to young players. And now we add in Curl and we add in Lake, and we add in some of these other guys with Fisk and Verse. And it seems like now this defense is just a young kind of wrecking machine.
Howie and Les, man. I'm telling you, those two guys.
Two different approaches, but two, they're almost prophetic at this point. I mean, like, we were sitting here 2 years ago saying, okay, well, I don't know how good this defense is. Verse and Fisk end up playing well. Now we're seeing the development of the coverage players who take a little while to figure out how good they are. And it seems like everything is just kind of locking into place for the Rams, particularly when you put it with Matthew Stafford, who's very highly ranked in SumerScore as well, and Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams. You got a pretty good team at that point.
Let's pivot to the team conversation now. And Shawn Syed will be joining us in just a moment to contribute his thoughts, having watched the tape. And then obviously we'll be going through the data and what that tells us. Buffalo and Philly are undefeated. They are the only two teams that are undefeated. Some people will say that the best teams so far have been Buffalo and Philly, and that their records say that. They've won all their games. Win-loss is ultimately all that matters. What do you say to that?
I think the interesting part is they're doing it in two different ways, right? The Bills offense has crushed teams basically since the time they've stepped on the field. They ran over the Ravens. They end up basically scoring on every drive down the stretch. And it hasn't been the craziest schedule after that. They played the Saints this past week, but basically the games are over within 3 or 4 drives. They've been able to be extremely efficient. They're tops in EPA per play by quite a bit. They're tops in total EPA. They're very good in success rate. Like, this is just an offense that has it figured out behind James Cook, who we have on our all-pro list, behind Josh Allen, the MVP from last year, behind an excellent offensive line. And then we've started to see Keon Coleman, some of the other wide receivers get together. On the flip side, that has not been what the Eagles are doing. The Eagles offense is struggling mightily, and their defense is one of the best in the league. They are currently 6th in EPA per play. They are really beating teams down, and with a couple of key special teams plays, they've been able to maintain their undefeated streak.
Looking at scoring differential leaders, which, especially this early in the season, I would point out in terms of win-loss record, like, that has a lot to do with who you've played so far. And in some cases, they've been able to pull out some tough wins, right? Or like the Eagles win over the Ravens is, well, we need to have a separate conversation maybe about the Ravens at this point. But, at least on the surface, you're like, that's one of the harder teams that they're going to play, and that's a quality win. But you have to be able to dig through the data, and like, there's more to this than just have they won or have they lost. And the Colts through 3 weeks were the best example of that, I think. They hadn't really played anybody. They played the Rams really, really tough. I think we learned a lot about the Colts that's positive about the Colts in this past game. But there's more to learn than just the win-loss record. So let's go into scoring differential as one way to look at this. And just going to read you the leaders in this category, because this essentially is something that, as the season goes on, will tell us who's playing really good football. You want the best teams to not only narrowly beat the opponent. You don't want teams that play down to the level of competition. You want teams that dominate when the matchup says that they should be dominating. You want teams that will rise in every way. And so this, in a lot of ways, will kind of point to the teams that are doing that. And no surprise that the Lions are on top in that sense. This is a team that did that all year last year. Their scoring differential was plus 222 on the season last year, and no one was even close. I want to say that the next closest team was 169. So the Lions are on top again at plus 49. Notably, the Seahawks at number 2 at plus 44. This is a team I want to circle and come back to because I think they're fascinating. The Bills that we've already mentioned, undefeated, plus 43. The Colts that we already mentioned, plus 40, even after that game against the Rams, which was a narrow loss. And so that's why they're still here. Broncos rose on this list last night. They are now plus 29 or Monday night. Jaguars plus 24. Vikings plus 22, Chiefs plus 21, and Patriots plus 21. The Eagles are at plus 20, so they're just off this list. But there are some interesting names there. Are these names that I think we would circle and say like, are they in the conversation for best team? Or have they just had good matchups? What should we make of this?
I think in particular, you look at the Lions, and the story on them all year has been that their defense isn't very good, and particularly their defensive backfield has not played very well. But then you go in the data and you look, and this is substantially turnover aided, in particular in the run game where they forced several fumbles. But they're like 5th in EPA per play, and that was kind of the story last year that I think went under the radar, is that their defense was pretty good when it came down to it. Now, really the only person that has maintained an extremely high level of performance has been Aiden Hutchinson. We've also seen some good games from Jack Campbell, the linebacker from Iowa, as well. But like that stands out to me, is that if you get a couple opportunistic games from a Detroit Lions defense and pair it with that offense, who had guys that just missed this list, Jared Goff just missed this list, Jahmyr Gibbs just missed this list of great players, it becomes a lot easier. The question with some of the other teams is like, you clearly have a weakness. The Denver Broncos clearly are struggling at the quarterback position. On Monday, they were able to get a level of production from the running game we quite literally have not seen since Sean Payton has been the coach of the Denver Broncos from J.K. Dobbins. Can they keep that up? Quinn Miners just missed this list in terms of run blocking. And so I think you try to identify what the clear weaknesses are and figure out if those will be a hindrance. Like, for example, the Buffalo Bills defense just seems like it's not going to be a hindrance. Like it will never be a hindrance for whatever reason. It's been like that for 3 years where they've had pretty much the same personnel guys, and they've been able to just roll over teams. And so I think that is the challenge for us sitting here at the end of week 4.
With regard to the Broncos and the run game, just quick note, I feel like it's worth pointing out too that the run game, although the numbers ended up being astronomical, those were really, really strongly second half numbers, like sitting on a lead and running the ball, because J.K. Dobbins, who I may or may not have been paying attention to in the early going for fantasy related purposes, ending up with 101 yards was not actually the story of the game in terms of the matchup and how they tried to get the lead, right? Like that was a sit on a lead kind of garbage time type of number that we ended up with there. They somehow found themselves in the lead despite Bo Nix's struggles in that game, which I think is interesting in terms of assessing them as a team, because what you described as a strength there wasn't even like, if you look at the first half and how you're trying to get out on top, like it wasn't like their run game was just dominant. And so that's how we won, you know?
Yeah. And if you go look at their performance across the season, they're like a pretty average rushing team. And so it may just be the case that this is going to be an average or slightly below average offense that is going to be buoyed by a defense that has added people like Talanoa Hufanga, who has had basically 3 all-pro rush defense grades at the safety position, and has added guys all over the field. And Pat Surtain is going to shut down Jamar Chase. And so maybe that's just the way that they're going to play. It's just difficult to make big, long playoff runs when that's the way you're going to operate, particularly in the AFC West, where if Ashton Genty starts getting going and that opens up the passing game for Geno to kind of progress to what we've seen while he was in Seattle, he's having a pretty rough year this year. It's going to be very difficult to compete against that level of quarterbacking.
On the flip side of this conversation, we'll get back to the good teams, but I just want to point out worst scoring differential. The Titans are minus 69. The Bengals are minus 58. The Bengals have been outscored on the season by 58. the second worst scoring differential in the entire NFL, which if I told you on the Tuesday prior to kickoff of week 1 that was going to end up being the case after 4 weeks, no one would have believed me. Like, yes, the defense needs to be better, all of that kind of stuff, but second worst scoring differential in the league, even with Joe Burrow out, because you and I were both like, Jake Browning, fine. It's just been a mess.
It's really interesting, and it was interesting to hear the broadcast yesterday because it seemed as if Aikman and Buck, who, they're there the week prior, they're doing research, they're talking to people, and they early on in the game were like, yeah, they want to run the ball more and they want to do this, that, and the third. And that wasn't really like the scenario that they were trying to pull off with Browning 2 years ago. And like, they're the 29th team in EPA per rush right now. And they're like trying to go under center and do all this stuff that looks different than what it looked like with Burrow. And I think maybe that's going to have to change here shortly due to that point differential.
Let's bring Shawn Syed into the conversation, our colleague here at SumerSports, crunching the tape all week long, putting out lots of great videos, breaking down what you're seeing from a scheme standpoint. Syed Schemes is the Twitter handle. We started this conversation, Shawn, we're talking about the best teams in the NFL through 4 weeks. And there's lots of different data points and ways that we can attack this. In terms of what your eyeballs have told you, who do you think we need to be having a conversation about? Who do you think checks this box?
Lindsay, I love this because, we're 4 weeks into the season. So at some point we have like all of this data. And then at another level, we do not have enough data. Like, football is such a small sample size sport because I'm doing this research. I'm looking at the teams. I'm thinking back, okay, this is what I saw from this team on film. This is what I saw from that team on film. Everyone has these just like massive, glaring flaws, which makes me absolutely love the season. And so, not the team that I think is absolutely number one. I do want to maybe have a conversation just around the Rams, because I think they're probably not the team that is thought of right away. And when I am watching their offense on film, there's just a smile across my face. We all see the Puka Nacua numbers. We see just like the marriage of him and Matthew Stafford, fantastic. Then also Puka and McVay together, where I'm sure we will talk about the Eagles just in the way that they use their number one receiver. Like, McVay, it feels like Nacua was built in a lab to like supersize all of the fun stuff that McVay did with Cooper Kupp. And so the Rams obviously have problems in the secondary, which makes me not have them as the top team overall. Their front is crazy. Like, Verse is really taking a step forward. I don't know how long Matt Stafford's going to stay healthy. I hope he is healthy for 22 games, if that's how much you play into the Super Bowl, because the Rams are just a team that I can't get them out of my head.
You know what's funny about you bringing up the Rams? I had the Rams pegged, and my brain, as soon as you said them, I was like, how do I incorporate the stats that I wanted to without it being the longest explanation ever that's going to get me to the Rams? But here we go. Okay, so I want to talk about yards per play differential, which is, we have a colleague here at Sumer named Christian Braun who was looking into yards per play differentials yesterday using Sumer Brain, our football AI chatbot, which is not publicly available yet, but will be soon. Quick teaser there. Yards per play differential means how many yards does an offense average per play, higher is better, and how many yards does a defense allow per play, lower into the negatives is better. And then when you put the two, so if you're looking at this on a line graph, for instance, you've got 0 in the middle, you want your offensive yards per play to be as high as possible away from 0, and then you want your defensive yards per play to be as low as possible away from 0. So you want as much space between the two numbers as possible. You want your differential between the two to be the highest number possible. The leaders this year in yards per play differential are, drumroll please, the Rams at number 1 at 1.45. The Seahawks at 1.25, the Chargers at 1.13, the Packers at 1.1, and the Colts at 1.02. So that means that all 5 of those teams are averaging a full yard per play more than the opponents that they have faced through 4 games. But the Rams being number 1 is very interesting, considering the fact that you just said that your eyes tell you that this is a team that deserves to be in that conversation, because it looks like the numbers are saying the same thing.
It may just be in my heart. Like, I watch a lot of stagnant offenses, and then I see just all the different things you can do on offense, where I love that Devontae Adams, he just still has the juice. Like, I'm so happy about that, because there are, of course, times in receivers' careers where they do just fall off a little bit, but he can absolutely win in isolation situations. You're seeing Stafford, I think, maybe turn down some underneath throws to be like, all right, let me go ahead and get the ball to Adams. There was one on the goal line in their last game. I do want to be clear. Like, I don't have the Rams as my top team. I probably have them at number 4, but I think they're absolutely worthy of, like, let's think about this. Like, because when you keep on breaking it down, you're like, wait, they're really good on offense. Wait, they're really good pass rush team. Wait, they've had like back-to-back 95th plus success rate run games against the Eagles, and then in their last game as well against the Colts. So you start to think like, oh, this is just like a really, really good team that we're almost certainly, as long as they stay healthy, going to talk about late in the season. And now it's also hard. You guys got to help me here, because I don't want to just do like, okay, well, because we could just have the show and say, oh, we'll just look at the records and see who beat who, and therefore one team is better than the other. I don't think we have to do that. I think some people may think that's the better way to do it. The Eagles did beat the Rams at the same time, right? How that game went, you have the block kick that ends up in that way. I would be fascinated, absolutely fascinated, to see a rematch when maybe the Eagles offense is able to get things a little bit more figured out, because the Eagles secondary is so much better, I think, than the Rams secondary. So it becomes a really interesting back and forth.
The Eagles yards per play differential this year is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth worst in the NFL, minus 1.24.
Not ideal, Shawn. It's not what you want. It's not what you want. It's definitely not what you want. What you do want is that 4-0 record, of course, which doesn't tell the whole story. And I think that, like, people are like, oh, are these Eagles the 2023 Eagles where maybe it's like a little smoke and mirror, but things collapse? The defense is so different than it was in 2023. So I'm not ready to have that conversation yet. I am maybe getting a little closer to like, oh, is this Eagles team the Chiefs from last year, where it's like you have this really strong defense, you have like talent in so many places, you have a quarterback that I think can just get it done. You're just squeezing on by, you're winning. Everyone is saying, this is wrong. And then we wake up in February and we're like, oh, wait, this team is just in the Super Bowl. So I feel like, there is a little bit of that. There's a lot to look at, I think, between their offense on things that may be going wrong, things that I think maybe are a little bit overblown. And spoiler, like, I still have them as my number 1 team overall, but I'm ready to be attacked on that one.
You have the Eagles number 1 overall.
I do, but I feel like there's a nice tier of all of these teams together. I say that obviously to make sure that nothing I say now can be used against me in a court of law at a later date. But at this point, I still think, and a lot of it is that, when I look at teams, I look at their holes overall. Every team has an issue. Like, well, what can get figured out? Even if the passing game, even if the running game doesn't look like it does last year, you can just have games where, like, they just fully out-talent you. Like, you can't always guard A.J. Brown. You are not always going to be able to tackle Saquon Barkley, even in a year where it feels like their offensive line does not look the same as it does last year. They're like, the solution to some of their problems, I think, might be just evident over time when A.J. Brown is just getting 100-yard games, really just because of his talent and not because of how the passing game is designed.
I think that's the most crucial part here. Is we're talking about the Bills, for example, and we're like, well, their pass offense is just gonna do it. Like, their defense could suck. That their strength of Josh Allen is so much stronger than everyone else's, or their strength of their offensive line and Josh Allen is so much stronger than everyone else's strengths. It's not going to make a difference. The problem is that the biggest weakness, and it's been basically so since week 8 of last year, Shawn, is like the biggest weakness of the Eagles is the thing you definitely don't want to be the biggest weakness, which is the passing game. And then functionally, like, if we're not going to get big games from Saquon, their offense basically becomes Jalen Hurts designed rush, scramble, tush push. And that's, like, frankly what it is. Like, if you look at the expected points added numbers, Saquon is not super high per play. Per pass, Jalen is not super high per play. Per rush, Jalen is doing well. And that's a result of him scrambling, and that's a superpower, and that's a whole other conversation. But, like, discussing those weaknesses, are there any other glaring weaknesses outside of the Eagles in that top tier that you think are on the level of the Eagles don't have a passing offense?
I mean, Sam, it's a little bit loaded, I think, to say the Eagles don't have a passing.
I'm just saying.
Wait, I want to interrupt too, because also the thing that I think we have to acknowledge here is that we're like, the Eagles passing offense being a glaring weakness also makes no sense, because it's not different than the passing offense that we saw last year. I mean, in some ways here and there, but you've got AJ Brown, you've got Devontae Smith, you've got Dallas Goedert, like all the weapons are the same. So you have to look at that and say, like, is this just anomalous the way this is starting? And is this the difference between a team starting off, their first drive is like a test out drive. We're going to try see what they do when we do these weird wrinkles, right? And then the next drive, okay, we're going to put together a drive where the entire goal is to get into the end zone. These are our best plays. Is this maybe a version of that where we're just seeing the Eagles play with some things early in the season? And if they want to, they could go, this isn't working. Let's do what we always did and then just fire it up.
I think that fans probably hope that that's what it is, but I mean, Kevin Patul, offensive coordinator there, has been there for multiple years. This issue is not isolated to just this moment in time for this Eagles team. You can look at various points last year. You can look at various points the year before that where this sort of conversation has been happening. Now, for me personally,
it always stabilizes.
For me personally, I think it would really worry me if when I'm watching back on film and I look at it and say, man, Jalen is just not seeing anything. Like, he is missing here. He is missing here. The conversation probably 2 years ago was a little bit more like, oh, should Hurts let the ball loose there? The conversation now, I think, is more based around this offense does not dictate the terms of engagement. I think about the run game. Like, how do you win in the run game? Can you just run over a team? Can you beat them with scheme? Can you get them with formation? They don't have the creative scheme at this point. I think they can get there. You see it in bits and pieces when you involve Jalen Hurts at time. Their offensive line is, unfortunately, Landon Dickerson had an injury earlier in training camp. I'm not 100% sure that he's at 100% because he is an awesome player. And I'm not sure he's at that same level as last year. You don't have Mekhi Becton as a mauler. You have Lane Johnson having some issues. So I think they're not dictating the terms of engagement just from that level. But we see it in bits and pieces. Like, when they spread out their formations, they get a little bit more attacking in that Bucs game. You get some of those 8-yard gains. So I do think it's there. And my higher point here is the second half of that Rams game, the first half of the Bucs game. The first half of the Bucs game was it was phenomenal for Jalen Hurts. It was awesome. Now, the second half, he definitely missed some throws and everything wasn't clicking there. But because I feel like there is still a high enough level with Jalen Hurts, I'm not just saying all right, well, the past game's over. It's not going to change overnight. It is not going to schematically morph. They beat you by winning one-on-one situations because no one can cover AJ Brown. Now, the Bucs DBs, really good game against the Eagles where they're sitting on that curl route kind of over and over. And we say, oh, it figures itself out every year. Last year, they win in a lot of ways. One, best defense in the league, but also because their run game was so good. And this year, the run game is not producing the same amount of explosive, so you have to lean on that pass game. I guess I'm more comfortable now just saying, Jalen is going to be able to do a lot of these things. I think maybe people generally see him as he's not able to be a passer over and over and over again. It's you see that seam ball against the Buccaneers. It's he's got it. It was uncharacteristic, I think, in the second half for him to miss some of those vertical throws. He's usually just absolutely nails on those types of throws. So it's not going to change, right? Because I think people have been asking for it for 4 years, unless they bring in some just totally new offensive coordinator or just burn it all to the ground overnight, which I don't think it makes sense to do at this point now.
Coming off a Super Bowl win.
Yeah,
maybe
right? And
now.
they're always such a good team. So it's fascinating because we're going to have this conversation in 4 weeks. We're going to have it in 8 weeks. We're going to have it in 12 weeks. It's going to be something that we're constantly going back and forth. And I love that the Eagles play all the other top teams, right? They've already played the Rams. They've already played the Chiefs. They play the Packers, the Lions, the Bills later in the season. So we just keep on getting more and more information about the absolute pro content team, the Philadelphia Eagles.
So we were discussing that prior to, Shawn, is that it feels like the top teams are in the AFC North, or we thought the Ravens should be a top team. They have Lamar Jackson.
They're looking like a pretty bad division right now.
The AFC, well, okay. The Ravens should be a top team, and it's difficult to play in the AFC North. Okay, they have a lot of top players, but let's focus in particular NFC East, AFC North. A good chunk of the better units. I'll put it that way, Lindsay, are having to play each other. And so when you're talking about, the Eagles are going to have to play all these good teams, how is this a year where schedule is actually going to matter over the entire 16 game sample just because of the way that is mixed up, where you have, three of the best defenses potentially facing each other throughout the year. You have two of the best offenses and four MVP candidates always facing each other. I mean, you look at the Chiefs. The Chiefs have played the Chargers, the Eagles. You look at the Eagles, who they played. You look at the Lions, who they played. Like, these are all really tough teams. The Packers as well.
Yeah.
Like, how much through 4 weeks can we really take away from the teams that are just mauling teams like the Bills, for example, who just have not played the level of schedule that the Eagles or the Lions, etc., have played?
It's such an important point, because when I look at the schedule the rest of the way, like, you want to be the Buffalo Bills. Like, we'll probably learn, maybe you say the least about the Bills, but they really have the inside track to the 1 seed. Like, when you have that kind of schedule, when you just look at the teams the rest of the way, of course they're going to play. I think they have like 2 or 3 like top end opponents. That's where you want to be. You want to be the team that is playing games, and people with podcasts are like, oh, are they playing enough hard teams? Who cares? You're going to get the number 1 seed. The Buffalo Bills have been there before. They have like glaring issues on the defensive end, but I guess for the Bills, I'm happy for them that it feels like they're going to be able to find a way to get that number 1 seed, where eventually we're going to have a year where Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson or someone else is able to kind of pull out that AFC Championship game. So I'm excited. Sam, I know I've said this to you a bunch of times, but like, when the Lions host the Packers, that's a game that's like red ink, circled. I'm so excited to learn a lot about both of those teams.
I wonder, though, about the Bills in that scenario that you just described, and whether or not that even is good for them, because we already know that they're going to be in the playoffs. We know that they're going to be one of those few remaining teams left. We want to know by then. If you're the Bills, you want to know what you need to do better. You want to have that information. I kind of look at it as like college football in the early season. Like, so I'm a USC fan. We just beat up on everybody for the first 2 weeks, and I literally sat there and went, for what? What does this mean? I don't care. Like, literally, I know.
Lindsay, this feels like your personal USC issue here now.
It may or may not be, but I do think it's relevant, because I wonder if you're a Bills fan, you're like, I need to know what we need to be better at so that we can start working on those things as the season. Like, we need these things to be unveiled early so that we have time to fix them. And I don't know if, I mean, like you described, if they have a path to the 1 seed and then the path just gets easier, but at some point you're going to run into these teams that we're talking about, whether you are best positioned or not. If you're going to win the Super Bowl, you're playing the good teams. How are you going to do against them?
Yeah, man, I think, you don't always have to play like teams 1 through 3 in terms of record to, I think, learn about yourself. Where, look, the Saints, who are, I would actually argue, quite competitive in a lot of these games, like, you're able to break a bunch of tackles at the second and third levels.
You can learn
like,
these things against Illinois, too.
You can.
Never mind.
When we do the college football hour, Lindsay, we'll definitely get to that. But you can see the issues at that safety position. It's sometimes just in terms of those tackles or making tackles for the Bills. So you can see that against the Saints. I mean, we could have said that was the issue for the Bills going into the season. We're going to say it in week 8. We're going to say it in week 16. The Bills are going to be thinking about it the entire season. So I do think for the Bills, you can see those issues popping up at different times. Then it's like, okay, well, in a 1-to-1 game, are you able to just kind of scheme yourself out of that? Are you going to have to, just hope for higher level play at different points? But there is just like nothing more important to me right now than getting the 1 seed. Like, it's just so absurdly valuable to have that. It feels like, hey, if they don't figure out all their secondary issues, I mean, it's hard too, right? Like, are you going to trade for a player? Are you going to have like massive improvement overnight? Are you going to be able to paper over it in a different way? The answer to all those questions might just be no, but we have the 1 seed and we have Josh Allen, and we're going to win games 41-40, and we'll see you in the Super Bowl.
So, Shawn, we've covered both of the undefeated teams. We've covered your favorite 3-1 team, the Los Angeles Rams, it seems like. But we have not covered...
I don't know. He had them 4. Someone's ahead of them.
Oh, yeah. Who's ahead of him?
Lions.
Great call out, Lindsay.
Okay. I can't quit the Lions, guys.
Yeah,
I'm so happy for them.
You shouldn't have to.
Me too. But let's cover potentially everyone's least favorite 3-1 teams, and that's coming from the AFC South, with the Indianapolis Colts and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Which one of these teams is real?
Sam, this is I love this. I will say,
can the answer be C neither?
Well, one.
You have 4 options.
I'm just creating options.
The Jaguars.
I'm glad.
Colts,
I'm glad that we have
both or neither
have options here. So for the Jaguars, I do really like some of the things that are going on both sides of the ball, where it feels like their offense is just like settling in a little bit, where you find your usage for Brian Thomas Jr. That's like the most right for him. I think I like the way Liam Cohen designs a run game. I thought that we saw that a little bit against the 49ers. For the Colts, I mean, I guys, I hate to do the moral victories thing. Moral victories, Indianapolis Colts 1-0 against the Rams. Full moral victory there. Where like they were not only were they competitive, but you find yourself in a situation where it is really just like a play here, a play there. If I'm going to say how much I love the Rams, and then even in a game where Daniel Jones throws an interception off play action and play on the first series, and then an interception to kind of end the game on that last series, I think that if I was, I guess, putting money on it, I guess I want
This just pivoted. Now we're betting.
Yes,
we
I'm
have
definitely
about betting Shawn over here.
For my supervisors. No, I'm not betting. No, there's no money going on this. Between the two, I'm having a hard time because I like neither of them are on my like this is the tier of full. Like I would still have the Packers and the Chiefs and the Bucks certainly ahead of both of these teams. I think that I guess I'm kind of leading with my heart and saying the Jaguars, but maybe that's just me saying like, all right, well, let's get Liam Cohen there, defensive coordinator's in Jersey guy. His brother coached my brother, so he's got me on his side there too, where they do some fun stuff on the defensive end of Jacksonville.
Can I throw a team into this mix that I think is interesting that we're not talking about, but it's up near the top in scoring differential?
Is it going to be the Steelers?
No, it's you weren't here when we talked scoring differential. It's the number 2 team in scoring differential, and it's the number 2 team in yards per play differential. And
Seahawks?
Yes.
Interesting. I'm listening.
What are we thinking? What do we make of that?
The committee has its ears open.
I have an open mind, an open heart, and open ears. Like when you look at Sam Darnold, I think his EPA per dropback in like kind of lower expected pass situations, like first, and then when it becomes like a more expected pass situation, it really drops. So that's something that I'm absolutely monitoring. Where you go back and forth. It's like, well, this is an offensive coordinator that is going to have like a high. Or like a low pass rate over expected. So it's certainly going to lean into the good old establishing it in different ways. At the same time, like JSN is just, I mean, the dude's hooping. Like he is really a lot of fun to watch on the outside, on the inside, attacking down the field. I guess that Thursday night game against the Cardinals, like I don't think the Cardinals are like a top end team. So maybe I just learn a little bit less. And then everyone knows how much I love Mike McDonald. So I'm open to it. I'm not gonna say, hey, we don't have to have the discussion at all, but I'm super excited for when we get Rams Seahawks. Obviously, we get that twice to be able to see just, all right, well, what does this Seahawks offense look when, I mean, you're having guys just like Jared Verse going to maybe run over your entire offensive line no matter what you do.
Lindsay, it's really interesting that he highlighted the pass rate and what it looks like when Darnold has to pass versus not pass, because that's the exact reason we cited when we were discussing, the progress report of Sam Darnold of looking really good, but not necessarily producing at all per level. That's exactly what we cited and showed up in the data. And so when the eye meets the AI that way, I think that's going to be really interesting. And that's a huge, like, blinking Las Vegas neon sign of this is for sure something to watch. And I also am interested in what that means for JSN. I'm wondering if he can maintain this level of production given the high rate of target share, the high rate of yards per route run, of which we've pretty much only seen Puka Nacua be able to stabilize at that level. I'm really interested in what this offense is going to look like, because I think the defense is probably pretty set at this point. I think that's a good unit, and we've seen over the past 2 years that that's the case.
See, they're interesting to me for that reason, though, because I think that they have pieces that I can imagine getting more involved as the season goes on. We've seen glimpses from Torrey Horton, right? Like you have AJ Barner and Elijah Arroyo, who are not household names, but are playing pretty well and kind of like taking turns and doing certain things. And so I feel like I can see it coming together, and the fact that they've been able to do what they've done so far this season with going to JSN at an insanely high rate, right? And still having some degree of success. I think that they're a team that's on my radar that is more interesting than I originally thought that they would be this year. I think that that's probably what I feel most comfortable saying. Maybe most improved.
We're really giving the trophies out.
So
hang the banner. Most improved.
When you set it up before you went into the statistics, Lindsay, I thought you were going to talk about the Chicago Bears, and I was very intrigued by that. I was like, oh, she's going like full Ben Johnson. This is exciting. And as the person who said preseason that they're going to win less than 6 games, and I'm happy to be wrong. Look, I love competitive football in the AFC North, and I love watching competitive football when Michael Parsons and Jared Goff and Caleb Williams and the entire defense and Brian Flores and KOC of the Vikings are involved. So Shawn, like, sitting there at 2-2, have started to look better. The offense is starting to come together. All of a sudden, Caleb's operating in structure. He's starting to look a little bit more like scary USC Caleb Williams, who can operate in a drop back passing offense while also adding in stuff. Is there it's just so tough with their schedule, but I feel like there's some juice there as well. We've talked about Liam Cohen. We've talked a little bit about Mike McDonald. Now it's Benny J time, Shawn.
Benny J.
I love our guy, Benny J. Yeah, I mean, I think we'll look at the team overall. I think you see some maybe issues on the defensive end that could, I think, preclude some of the things on offense. Obviously, you're hoping that they figure out the run game. To me, it's like obviously easy for me to say this, like not as a Bears fan, but like year one is about growth on the offensive end for Caleb. Like that is the win. That is the hang the banner kind of moment for this team. Unfortunately, I guess I don't look at their 2-2 start and say, okay, well, this is like a team that's really gonna or like has cemented themselves, has surprised us in the same way maybe that the Seahawks I think have, where maybe they shouldn't have surprised us and we should have had our eyes a little bit more open for the Seahawks. But I'm fine waiting and see on the Bears. Like I mean, we sat down and watched the Caleb film together and we're like, all right, well, that's improved. That's improved. This is getting better. He's seeing this well. That ball's on time. And you see that really nice throw to his left side in that like close to the red zone area against the Raiders. So I'm going to be happy for them. Also, like every team doesn't have to win the Super Bowl. Only one team gets to. And to be competitive, to like maybe you're knocking on the door for that division title where you're looking at the Vikings now and saying, well, the Vikings just like, is the bottom going to fall out there? I think probably not, just because of what the infrastructure is, but maybe a chance where going into the end of the season, you're like that competitive where maybe you're sneaking out that kind of like bottom end wild card slot. And again, it's just like, is Caleb improving? Like that is just the only thing that I feel like I really want to see from the Chicago Bears. And I think early on I was like, yeah, I don't know. But now, my mind is certainly more open to it when he's showing some of the things that he is on film.
Lots for us to think about as we move forward to week 5. Thank you, Shawn, for your observations. Really appreciate you joining us. As always, go follow him on the Twitter and also check out SumerSports YouTube page. There's tons of great videos that he's been putting out there, breaking down things that you need to know. And so we will be back again next week with lots more to discuss on the SumerSports Show. Thanks for being with us.